Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody, to a wonderful live show for a Shadow in Summer. Hello to everybody that's watching. Hello to everybody that's watching this on later when it's on YouTube, not as live. Thank you for coming. We are super excited to talk about a wonderful book, that Shadow in Summer, which is the first book of the Long Price Quartet. Yeah, we're half and half.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
With me, we have three lovely people. If you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, starting with Ben.
I am the name on the screen underneath my face. I make absolute hot garbage, and I'd recommend watching other people's channels compared to mine. But that's it. If you want to see me, then you can. But I wouldn't blame you if you don't.
That's a lie. His videos are fragrant garbage. Thank you very much. And extraordinarily above average. So check him out. He has a wonderful sense of humor. So,
yeah. Thank you very much.
Overly extraordinary.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Ben stole my introduction because that was what I wanted to say myself. But I'm Klaus. I'm the contradictorian on BookTube. And I am part of the winning team of this readathon, Team Zeus.
Whatever, Klaus. I'm Kate. I'm from the Almost Book Doctor, and I am on Team Apollo. And yeah, I love this book, and I want to know your opinions on it.
Yeah. Well, go check all three of these people out if you're not subscribed to them. Their links are down below, as well as to the Shelf Space Discord, which is where we pretty much all were reading it. We'll have further buddy reads for the rest of the series over the next few months, all hosted on Shelf Space. So check out Shelf Space. Check out these three lovely. Oh, whoop, that's where they came. These three lovely people. Yeah. So Shadow in Summer. Do you guys want to go over where you are in the series currently? Because I know we're not all in the same spot.
Yeah, I've just finished the first book. That's it. I haven't read any more.
And that's where I am as well. I just picked it up for the readathon.
Yeah, I'm the only person here who's read all of it. I binged the entire series in March or in April. Yeah.
I really wanted to.
I can recommend that.
I'm halfway through book 3, and some really big things just happened that I can't talk about right now. But the big, Klaus, it happened. And,
it gets even bigger, yeah.
So I'm interested to see the people who haven't read the second and third one yet, like your thoughts and what you think's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I enjoyed this book way more than I thought I was going to. Like, going into it, when you see the Goodreads, it's like, 3.6 out of 5. And it's like, people are just
ridiculous,
destroying it. And like, everything that people put as a negative was why I love this book so much. Like, in my head, it's like a 9 out of 10. And I was recommending it to someone, and I literally was like, nothing happens. And then, and it means everything has happened. Like, it's such a good setup to continue the series, is that absolutely nothing happens, but everything does.
Yeah, that sort of sums it up perfectly. There's a lot of internal development and a lot of thinking in general. A lot of thinking and a lot of interesting themes that aren't completely explored in the first book, because usually you think that the author would just start with a bang to really raise the attention, but he doesn't. He just keeps being patient and patient throughout the entire book. So there's not a real fighting scene or action scene in the entire book, and that's true for the second one, almost for the entire second one as well. That's really interesting.
And I don't mind that at all. Like, I really liked it. It's a different type of book. Like, action is action, but like, if you can actually keep a reader engaged without having fighting scenes, without having, catapults flying and catapults throwing things. They don't actually fly unless that
catapults flying would be quite awesome.
That would be cause damage.
Yes, but so I think he does a really good job of keeping the reader, or keeping me engaged at least, with the actions, because I don't necessarily agree with the statement that nothing happens. I think a lot of things do happen, and simply the phrase, it's an expectation thing. I think, like, people expect action, and they equivalize that with action, things happening, and things changing. But I feel like everything is happening, and things are changing in ways that you can see and you can pick up. It's just not in the typical fashion.
The whole book is like based on conversations that characters have with each other, and internal development as people as they grow, and it's just so subtly done. I feel like this book is the definition of like a slow burn.
Yeah.
And once the ending is just so good, and you don't even realize all the things that have built up to that until you reach that point, and then you're like, oh my gosh, now everything else makes sense. It's like playing a game of chess, almost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How is this full spoilers, or I don't know how far we're going?
Let's stick with no spoilers for a little bit. Then we'll be like, hey, it's time for spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
So does anybody else have any things they want to have, specific things that they want to talk about before we get into spoilers?
I feel like it's kind of hard to talk about some of the stuff without spoilers, because I don't know about you guys, but my favorite part of the whole book is the characterization, the development of the people. Mm-hmm. It's hard to talk about that without mentioning specific people. But like, if you are a character-driven person and maybe you perhaps didn't like The Blade itself, if you read Joe Abercrombie, you might like this book, because I feel like it's a character-driven novel in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean in terms of like they're similar vibes of like character driven, but I don't understand the perspective of not enjoying The Blade itself, to be perfectly honest with you. But in terms of, I understand that if people would probably enjoy this if you didn't like The Blade itself, because they both have seemingly little plot but have overarching effects that lead on to the next books. Well, I haven't read the next books, but I assume it would do. But the characters are really strong in this book. Like, for me, I was surprised by like how much I related to the characterization a lot. In terms of, they were probably the most some of the most relatable characters I've read in fantasy, and then also just the influences, like the idea of using poses, like the way he uses poses to characterize how people are feeling, was so interesting and so well done. And it's nothing I've ever read before. But that's also another thing where it's hard to recommend it to people, because the idea of being like, yeah, rather than saying that, they said something excitedly, it just puts that he does a pose. That doesn't sound interesting in any way, but I was so enthralled by it, I couldn't help just keep reading it to find out more.
Yeah,
I love that you could like diss people silently with your different poses and show different levels of respect. And so there's like multiple levels of communication in this book, which made it all the more interesting to watch the dynamics. And I don't necessarily think the conversations would have been as interesting without those other layers on there.
Yeah, and I think that Ellen's point in the chat is at the heart of it. So they make these decisions, and you can see that this is not going to go well, but you know why they are doing it, because it's explained that well. And the special thing is, all of these characters have agency, so none of them is like, you need all of them for the story to work, but none of them is overpowered, because none of them could carry this book on their own, and they are all part of that society and of that people, and are influenced by the circumstances, and they don't really change the circumstances until later on in the series, and that's what makes it so relatable for me. And another thing I want to talk about is the Undead, because I think you can talk about the Undead without spoilers, because this concept is just so amazing.
Yeah.
So basically, for people who haven't read this book, the Undead are abstract ideas made flesh. So they are like, I've explained them like jinn. So these poets can summon them, and they have one special power that they can use. And for example, the one in the first book is Seedless. and he pretty much can, take away seed. So he could theoretically make people not being able to produce children anymore, but he can also like take away those seeds from the various plants, and that makes it easy and gives that city like an economical bonus or something. But I think like this concept of the Undead is so interesting and so original. Like this entire novel felt so original, not only because of the characters, but also about the whole world building. So I have seen those hand gestures used in other books as well. But all of it coming together and the entire way these cities are built up, that's completely unique and original. So I really, really enjoyed reading that.
When you said about characters being limited, like they have agency, but they're limited, I think he does a great job even with the Undead, because they're almost seen like gods, but they're still so limited in what they can do because of their connection with the poet. And I won't talk any more about that to get into spoilers, but I think Seedless's real title is the one that removes what continues. And so these abstract thoughts have these very specific names around them, and you have to define this one thing. And as you guys move into the next books and you meet other Undead, it's so creative. Pocket God, yes.
Yeah.
Then John was saying that they act a lot like the replicants in Blade Runner, which I actually haven't seen or read Blade Runner yet, even though I really want to.
What?
So it's on the list.
The imaginary list that everyone has.
I have an actual list. I call it my Captain America list. Anyways.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. I love the Undead, and the concept of the Undead is absolutely. Once I figured out what they were, I was like, "Oh wow, this is unique and interesting," and played interestingly into the plot. I think once we get back to the Undead, when we go in the spoiler section,
because the Undead also provides characterization for the poet. And it really helps you understand both characters by their dynamic against each other, which is a really interesting dynamic as well. Just watching them, they don't even really interact that much together. It's more like how they act and how they talk about each other separately informs their opinion and their character of each other. And I think that's really interesting. Well, quite often you get people's characterization of how other people view them, which is another way it kind of relates to Abercrombie as well, where Abercrombie constantly describes other characters. It's that same kind of feeling of reading their opinion of someone else helps you gain more about themselves than it does the other person.
Yeah. And I like how the Undead can be they're connected to the poet, but they can also do their own thing. Like the fact that the Undead can have conversations with other people without the poet around. I did not expect that from the beginning of the book. I didn't know that the Undead could do that. And so I found it surprising, and just, I think that in itself also tells you more things about the poet, was you learn what the Undead are. Oh, I'm getting into I can't talk about this spoiler territory now.
Yeah.
But I think, okay, so going back to what Alan said real fast, I think I talked about this in my review of Betrayal of Winter, but I think that Daniel Abraham has got to have a good background in psychology, because the way that he writes people and their decision-making process, I feel like I can understand exactly why someone does something in his books, even though I don't want them to do it. And I feel like understanding that makes you kind of reflect a little bit on yourself when you're reading. Is this a decision I would have made? Maybe. And oh no, what does that mean about me?
There was the feeling towards the end of the book, to keep it non-spoilers, there are parts where you're like, I cannot believe you're making this completely understandable and human decision right now. I can't believe you're doing this, even though it makes complete sense and I would do the exact same thing. And it's it kind of annoys you how human they're acting. You're like, why aren't you acting like a character in a book right now? And it kind of, they play flaws inside of the characters extremely well.
Precisely.
Yep.
So, do we want to get into spoilers?
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's
Albert?
all the juicy part.
We already have a convert, everyone.
Yeah.
Within 15 minutes. Good job, guys.
Understandable.
One of us, one of us, one of us.
Yes.
All right, so gonna get into spoilers. If you haven't read the book, I would definitely recommend you skedaddle because we're gonna talk some major spoilers and things are gonna happen. I mean, Albert, if you can't get it on its own, just buy the whole series, right? You're gonna want to. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
yes. Considering how many people I know that read the first book and then just can't stop.
Yeah, I only bought the first one because I was like, oh, I'll just try it and then see. And then immediately I was like, oh, I wish I'd bought all 4.
Yeah. And just so you know, Ben, the 4th book is not available in softcover.
That's the most. What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was never released.
It was
So I
never
have
released
all-
because people did read it. Because people are dumb.
People
Oh,
are very
that's
dumb.
the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard.
Which
Yep.
is why I bought all of them, and I bought the hardcover 4th one, and then I rebought the first 3 in hardcover.
Oh
I
my
couldn't bear it.
god.
But guys, what do you think of the book when we can talk spoilers now? What was your favorite part? I want to know.
All of it.
Oh, yeah, that's actually really difficult to choose a favorite part.
Yeah. All right. Bye, David.
Bye, David.
Bye, Albert.
See you later.
Okay, not favorite part. Let's try favorite character.
I really liked, oh gosh, the names. Ota. I
Ota.
really,
yeah,
I
Ota.
really like his character, and I know we're going to see more of him because of vague things that have been said, as well as just the general trajectory of what the book is and the potential that he has. I mean, so
Yeah, he must be a major character in the second book.
I'm gonna have to cover my face so that I don't accidentally.
unless Abraham pulls a Martin or something like that, I think Ota is going to be through all 4. But
Or he's just
Kidding.
not in it. Just
I'm
not in it.
kidding.
yeah, just like from the prologue, it's just like he's at the center of things. I was actually kind of floored when it felt like we didn't have him for like the first half of the book after the prologue.
When you figured out Itani was Ota, were you like, what? Because I think I screamed in the Discord at some point. Like, what is this?
I was
so
really
happy.
excited.
Part of me was confused for a second because in my head they were both Ota was so young that I was kind of it took me the same person. But when the introduction of Itani is that I know he's at 20, but it felt like he was really young to be the same person for a second. I was like, okay, I need to catch up there. So that's the only bit that I feel like I had any problem kind of adapting to originally.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Yeah, I agree with Anita because
I-
they felt similar in a way. So it made sense, and it didn't make sense to me that Abraham was going to write 2 characters that feel this similar, and so I thought that's him. But my favorite, it's hard to say for me because I've read the entire series.
Yeah.
Oh, your opinions change a little bit from book to book.
Yeah, and it all sort of comes together because it's really a perfect overarching storyline. But my favorite character in the first book, I think, is Ahmad. So the old woman, basically. Because I haven't read a lot of characters that feel like her before. Because usually that's not a perspective you get. There's not a perspective you get in a fantasy book usually. So she was really interesting, and I
really liked her.
She is amazing, and I will say she is actually pretty similar to another character that he helped write in The Expanse called Avrasala. So they are similar, but they are different. Avasarala is Avasarala. I'll just say that. She is quite a vibrant character. I really liked Amat was great as well. Just going in, it warmed my accounting heart to have her go forward and be like,
Of course.
I'm gonna go figure out all these accounting things and then undercut him and
Yes.
pin it all on his right-hand man. That was beautiful.
She was really
Always
cool.
cover your ass. Yeah.
I felt she was a good contrast to Liat, who was so like naive and young and was trying to make her way in the world. And you know, she wants to be like Amatkian, but she's also like, she's a little selfish. Just a little selfish, and then by a little, probably a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A lot. A little. No, a lot.
When
Definitely
she was like,
selfish.
she loved Itani, but she also loved power more than him. And I feel like when she flips and when he leaves and she ends up with Mati, that part of it is because she's like, he's going to be a poet, and if I'm connected to a poet, then I'm going to have more power too. So I started liking her, and then it just kind of devolved a little bit.
This book and the sequel both have love triangles, and they're the only two love triangles I've ever been okay with. Because they are
so good.
They are just so real, because that's what happens to people when your boyfriend is away for a long time, and that just happens. So, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. You can relate to Leah in terms of both not liking her and being like, you can understand them together, where you're like, well, her and Atani evidently had problems anyway, and it was probably going to happen, and you can understand the parting of ways, but then you also know that she's also doing it for the power perspective. And that's one of the examples of where he really balances positives and negatives of characters to make them feel real. And then, yeah, I like the dynamic of, I like how everyone has a mentor, pretty much. In terms of, Liat has a Matt, then you've got Matey has the poet, and it's all kind of, people have positive and negative relationships with their mentor characters. And it's not all like, oh, this is my Gandalf. It's kind of like, no, this person's a really bad influence on me, and if I pay attention to what he's doing, I'm going to end up exactly like this person. And it does a good job of having both examples.
Yeah. I like what you said about mentors.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that before in that way. But like Mati has almost two mentors, one on purpose and one that he turns into his mentor, because I think he looks up so much to Ota, but maybe he shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think,
but then his shy is just kind of terrible too. But part of that is because of Seedless. So
to a certain point, yeah.
Yeah, not to flip on characters again, the dynamic between Matey and, I call him Matey because I'm British and we call people mate, so I just call him Matey. Like I was literally reading this, I don't know how to pronounce this, just gonna call him Matey. So their dynamic, him and Ota, where you've got Matey Ota is kind of the mentor character. Matey looks up to him and is kind of like, oh, maybe I should have chosen to leave. And at the exact same time, you've got the opposite where he's like, this is my life if I'd have stayed. And it's kind of, they're both envious and also glad they made the decisions they made, which is also a really interesting dynamic of, like, the more I talk about this, the more I'm realizing how absolutely amazing this book is. Like, it's getting better now that I'm talking out loud and putting things together that I hadn't even thought about.
You need to like sit back with it and like really digest it afterwards. I feel like, you're gonna love the second one then. I love the second one.
Yeah, honestly, this is me digesting the book, honestly, because I've been like, with the readathon and everything, it's like I feel like I haven't had time to digest and talk about some things.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just like, oh wow, this there's more. There's so much more.
Yeah,
I like what Alan said. So everybody, they're all three of them are teenagers.
Yeah.
And they act
Leon's
like
like 16.
Yeah. They act realistically, but also like, not to the extreme or not to the extreme logical or extremely irrational. If that makes any sense.
But I think he tries to frame Ota as the mature one of the group. But when you step back and think about it, he's just turned 20. Like, he's not that much mature than everybody else. The only reason he feels so much more mature than Mati is because he's been out in the working world and he's been doing all this hard labor. But the decisions he makes are not any more informed than other people. I can't talk. But yes, and they're not like plot devices, which is just great because I hate when a person exists purely to be a plot device. Ephraim, what?
Okay.
Yeah, that's iron gold for you.
Yes.
Yeah, and it just makes me think so much, and I'm still thinking about the series, and I've read it in March or April, whatever, because so many books in my life, they just blur into each other because I'm reading so many of them, and I just keep thinking about this one, but both about the entire series, because the way the series is built is really, it's just, I know people say that something is coming together at the endings, like at every good book we read, you say, oh, the ending, everything is coming together perfectly, but the way the entire series comes together is just on another level. It's like, it's ridiculous the way how perfect Abraham has constructed every single scene and development and relationship, and it all makes sense both in the individual book and in the entire series. Is completely outstanding, and it's just incredible. And the first one is actually the weakest one by a mile. Like,
oh god,
I think I gave the first one 4.5 stars. And then the others are it just gets better and better, and it's on a completely different level, because the first one is him basically just introducing his world, and then it just gets, and then he builds up, and then things happen that something is going to happen from the start, because yeah, but when it happens, it's still it really blows your mind. Honestly, it's incredible. But yeah,
I think each of these books so far has made me cry. Not like full blown crying, but like silent tears, just because of how poignant some of the moments get, especially in the second one. Well, and the third one, all of them. But I know that the ending is going to blow my mind, but it's not like other books. I'll equate other books to like the ending of Lost. Like, there's so many different things that never get tied up. And I feel like this is going to just have this very all-encompassing conclusion. And each book kind of, you have an ending for each book, but then there's this little thing that's tacked on the end that is going to change everything. But it's not going to change it right away, because each book is 14 years after the last one, which is just incredible. So, I don't know if you want to talk about themes yet, but I have my quotes and stuff in this book, and the themes in this one are so good. And he has different themes in each book, I think, but the way that he talks about like relationships and love in this first book, along with that love triangle that happens, it's so well done. I was so impressed. Like, it beats any romance book I've ever read. It probably beats every other fantasy book I've ever read when it comes to talking about like realistic relationships and expectations. Definitely. And yes, I'm a 5-star strumpet. I gave all of them 5 stars.
I'm tempted to actually just go on, because this has such a low rating on Goodreads. I'm probably just going to go rate it on Goodreads because it deserves to be rated and brought up.
That's what I did as well. I immediately was like, I'm rating that because it's criminally underrated on there.
Yeah, it's so underrated. But if you look at the entire series, if you look at the bind up rating, that's where you have to look, because that is up here. Because the people who've read the entire series, they know their business.
They know.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think about the ending to this one, like, initially? Because I was on the fence about it.
Ooh.
I don't know. My brain is weird. So
You're an accountant, yeah. So
True.
So whenever I'm reading a book, I like start tying all the threads together and try to see where everything is going to go. And one of the things I was doing with this one, a lot of the times, is what I'll do is like, what is the what are like situations that will accomplish the least death? What is the right ending for this? And the way I thought this was going to end, like that was starting to get teased, was I thought, what's his face? Marchat, the House Wilson dude.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was going to actually commit suicide and leave a note saying, hey, this is all mine. I thought he was actually going to do that, and that was going to wrap everything up, and everything would be hunky-dory. Because that situation would result in the least amount of death. Seedless wouldn't have to retaliate. Galt wouldn't have to retaliate or anything like that. Everybody would be like, all right, it was just this dude trying to curry favor with Galt. And people would be frustrated. Like, Amat would be super frustrated. But war wouldn't have happened. And now I'm kind of like, things are going to happen now. Kind of left it open.
I don't know if anyone would have believed that he was acting on his own. I don't know. But
See, I like that people probably would have, because this book does a really good job of making you feel like you're in, you're in the circle, and it's kind of like a. I like the idea that this is kind of a weird sentence, but how many times politicians or some like head businessmen be like, all right, today's the day I'm killing myself. And then something happens where someone else gets the blame and they're like, I'm going to put that letter away and I'm going to keep living. And it's kind of like, it's very realistic in the expectation where it sets up. It's like, you now expect this to happen. And then other people's own interests affect his life without them having any idea who each other are properly. Like, they've met each other once, Etani and him, but Etani's actions completely change Marchat's life, and like his the way he's moving forward. And I really enjoy they don't even mention that, but it's the simple acknowledgement that other people's random actions will affect your own life without even realizing. And it's the same way, like I was so shocked. This is kind of a bit of a tangent, but with the fact that there's barely any like action or violence in this book at all, when Marchat, like when there's the attempted murder on Liat, I was so shocked when that happened. Like it happens all of a sudden, and like I just remember reading it. I was like, oh, "What just happened?" Because it just happens and ends. Because the idea of like some type of violence or gore happening was so shocking. In terms of you've got like forgot the guy's name, the one with the mat. He's constantly slapping her. It's horrible violence. Like in terms of quite intimate. But the disconnected kind of disposal of this human was like really shocking just to come out of nowhere. And I think like in terms of the idea of there not being much violence really pays off when that one bit happens, and kind of making you hate Marchat more, which then makes you really annoyed when he gets to survive because of what Etani does.
Were you surprised that Etani actually, or Ota actually did that? Were you surprised when he had to actually murder Eshai?
I loved how easily he did it. Like in terms of the fact that he leaves and he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to facilitate someone else to do it. And the idea of like, once you've done that, you're a murderer. So when he's there, he's like, I mean, I may as well get my hands dirty. I'm here. Yeah. So it's just like, screw it, you stand back, I'll do it. And he does the murder. Like she's just kind of like egging him on at that point. And I like the idea that he's like, no, I didn't plan on murdering him. I just planned on watching someone else do it. And I actually really enjoyed that whole escalation of him.
It's so important. Like, I'm backing up Ellen completely in the chat. Like,
oh, I can't see the chat.
It's
Let me.
Neither can I.
If you
Why
guys
can't
click
you see
on
the
the right, you should
I'm on
be
my
able
phone,
to.
so I can't see the text.
Ah.
On the right, there's
And
the
I am
it
a
says-
boomer and can't work it out.
They're
There's
my
basically
favorite
Alan says-
too.
says that the decision of Ota, so that he kills what's his name, Hitai, is so
Hitai.
important to his character going forward, because it really is. It is what kicks everything that comes after this happens because of this decision, because he did that. And in that moment, it's the right decision to do. It's like the smallest evil he can do to avoid the big epic evil, like the slaughtering of the entire nation or whatever.
Which brings
But
us
if
to
you
the
look back
big
on it,
theme.
it's incredible. It's incredible.
That's the big theme of the book, of everything. I feel like is, do the ends justify the means? And he is justifying killing this one person by saying it's going to keep all these other people from being killed, or it's going to keep Seedless from being unleashed and killing all of these innocent unborn children in Galt, because that's what Seedless does. And I don't even talk about when Seedless does his thing, like halfway through the book, I had to set it down and walk away, because the way that it's done, it's like almost nobody cares. At least that's how I felt. Like, it was just one and done. Okay, let's get on with the rest of our day. Like, it didn't really matter that much. And it felt so wrong to me when I read it. Ugh. This book.
James, get out of here. Nobody can destroy Tim Zoots.
Of course. You say that now.
Yeah, I am.
Still got 4 days, man.
Remember, I can spoil the entire series for all of you. So.
I didn't say anything.
Yeah, I know. Because I raised you well.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
going back to what Ben was saying about the violence in the book, I think Abraham communicated it so well. Not only was it like shocking to see it, but he also communicated through just how much he ignored it in his writing, basically. He communicated how hush it was in the society. Like because of how he basically, it wasn't violent and bloody. It was like, oh, this happened. There was pain. And then just brushed over it. And it was masterfully done. And the conflict within Ota over the murdering of
Heshai.
Heshai.
Thank you. I almost said another word that I'm probably not allowed to say on.
Oh no! No,
Yeah.
not that one.
So that was also really well done. I think seeing him just be like, screw it, I'm gonna be like, he basically, I don't think it was explicitly stated, but for me it felt like he was just like, look, I'm gonna have to live with this guilt anyways, so better that I feel guilty for doing it than feel guilty for facilitating it
and making her do it.
That's what he decides to do, because in that way he is the guilty party, and
not someone else.
Otherwise he has half the guilt and she is guilty as well, and so in a way he's even protecting her from doing that by killing him, which is weird. But about the violence, the thing is, the less you use something in a book, the more meaning it gets. Because if you read The Heroes by Abercrombie, which is like that, huge battles, and the entire novel is just one huge battle. And then obviously a person dying and violence doesn't mean a lot because it's everywhere around you. But if you write this book without action scenes basically, and without lots of violence, and then there is this one scene later on in the book where it actually happens, then it really hits you, and that is what Abraham does so well. And I know Joe Abercrombie is like my lord and savior of character writing and everything, but the thing is, if I had to choose who I would like to write a character, then I would always pick Daniel Abraham, because Abercrombie is really good at writing these anti-heroes, and it's great. But these people are like, they are good people. They are good people doing bad things. And Abercrombie is better at writing these grimdark characters. But Abraham, they are all just so relatable. Like, none of them is a torturer or anything. It's just so human. The things they do, the decisions they make, and that's what makes it this great. It's just chef's kiss.
Yeah, it's like, rather than someone in a horrible circumstance, like, rather than, like you said, a torturer, it's like, well, this is a kid that's going to, like, boarding school, and now he's just got to murder someone. Or it's like, oh, it's a college dropout. He's murdering someone.
It's like
now.
Draco Malfoy, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I describe this. This is Harry Potter for Abercrombie fans. But I've always like, I gave the first Law trilogy like 9 out of 10s, and I never felt like it hit a full 10 because like it didn't do the things that this book does incredibly well. And it's like when I finished the first Law trilogy, I was like, there's something more I can get from this, and this felt like that. It felt like, oh, this is that little bit more that I didn't even realize I wanted, but I'm really glad it's here. And it is, I never even thought of really Abercrombie whilst reading it, but now talking about it, Abercrombie makes sense to compare it to, even though they're so wildly different.
Yeah. Let's talk about decisions have far-reaching consequences, and I think that's probably why that kind of plays back into why people rated it 3.5, is they're not like understanding. Kate. Okay, she's come back.
We've lost her.
Oh dear.
She's coming back. There she is.
Hey.
Better internet in my room. So
Alan says you really need to read the thing.
I know I have to finish Autumn War. I have like 200 pages left.
And this was in relation to the whole scene with Seedless and Maj just
Oh,
the scream.
just broke my heart.
I can't imagine. Oh my gosh, that was painful to read, even though you knew it was happening. Like, you could feel her pain.
I wasn't prepared for it to be that terrible. Like, I wasn't prepared for him to do something that horrific in this story. I don't know what I thought he was going to do, but I don't know if you guys feel the same way. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a girl that it hurts, makes me feel even worse. But like, man, I was outraged. I was just like, how possibly?
The prose in that scene are perfect because it's so like there's no poetry to it. It's not trying to gloss over anything. It's not trying to make it feel beautiful. It's just like the description of just like the noise. It felt so real. I was like, this is horrifying. Like, this is way more. The idea of almost nothing being described makes it feel so much more vivid. It's almost like in old horror films or something, where it's the idea of fear of the unknown, like don't show the monster. It's that, where it's the ambiguous aspects and the kind of, I'm gonna seed an idea of an image, and you're just gonna fill out the rest. Is horrifying, especially in that scene. Is horrifying.
And I love the build up to that scene, like in a way that you can love terrifying things. That like I thought it was very masterful. That like he planted the ideas of the sad trade, and I knew it had something to do with somebody getting it had something to do with some abortive something from the beginning. And then it started talking, just giving you bit by bit what that meant and what the plan was. And that, oh, Maj doesn't know what we're doing. The woman we're going to do this to doesn't know what we're doing. And rage and
it was messed up. It was so messed up.
And it took 1 second. It took a second to do that. And that's it. And this woman's life was destroyed. Like,
And that was one person. That was one person, and they have the power to do that to everybody in the world in the same second if they want to.
And he's so psychologically messed up. This guy is not stable. He's not stable at all. No. And Seedless. Okay, I still don't have any answers for what Seedless' relationship with Mati was all about because I was so confused.
Oh yeah, that was so interesting.
I was like, what is going on? Why does he like Mati? Is he trying to like butter him up in case he ends up being passed down to him or what? Because
I think
the same.
So originally this was my theory, and I think the end of the book and how things get passed on. So my original theory was that in order for a poet's apprentice to take on the Undot, they would have to they would have to basically be the poet, because I wasn't sure how much you could change an idea. But I think part of it had to do with Seedless. Seedless's overarching goal is, I want to be released. I want to be free. So if you take that in context of Mati and Seedless's relationship, I think Seedless was mostly trying to make it so that Mati didn't become his master. Because in order to do that, he would eventually understand more and completely understand by being his master. And thus be able to change the poem enough to bind Seedless again.
I feel like Seedless is supposed to be an extension of Heshai. He has his qualities. He's made him what he is. And I think for the most part, Heshai feels like he gave Seedless all of his terrible qualities. But I don't think that's true, because there are a few points where Seedless does something selfless for Mati, or at least kind of leaning.
Yeah, that made me feel really bad.
And so I don't think I gave him all of his bad qualities. And the fact that he doesn't understand that, like, they have a very complicated relationship between the two of them, even though they're the same. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't understand each other. I don't know. I think that's probably my favorite relationship in the whole book, to be honest, just because it was so complicated.
Yeah, I came at it from the perspective of rather than Seedless trying to not make Matey like his master, wasn't like, in my head it wasn't from a kind of a self-gratifying way, kind of like, I'm going to escape. I felt it almost like, I feel like Seedless, even though he hates Hesai, it's like in his DNA to hate Hesai. There's kind of a sense of pity for him, like in terms of like, I am the way I am because you hate yourself that much. And there was almost like, in my head, it was like, I'm gonna protect Matey because I know if he goes, I don't want to see this kid become like him. Not from a perspective of, if he becomes like my Hesai, he's gonna be able to control me. I saw it as like, I don't want to see another nice kid get turned into this absolute empty shell of a human being. And at least maybe I was trying to be happy about it. Now that you've said it, I'm like, Seedless was probably being awful, but it was really cool that I felt sympathy for Seedless throughout. He did an awful thing. I'm like, my man's a slave. Like, let's not beat around the bush. The guy doesn't want to be there, and he's being forced to do what he does. Can't really blame him for being like, just gonna mess with my master, because it's understandable. It's disgusting, but you understand that even for something that's not even human, you can completely relate to the decision it made. But yeah, maybe I was trying to be nicer to Seedless. I was like, oh, maybe the guy just wants me to have a nice life and not be like him. But I do now kind of think that maybe he's a scumbag still.
When he put him in the cage, I felt so terrible. I was like, this is not okay. It's like torture. But then you think, what is Seedless? Is he a person? And that's when the whole question of like, what is a person, what constitutes personhood came up for me in the book. And I thought that was such a cool theme. Like, what are the Undead? Do they deserve to have any form of like their own agency?
Human rights.
Yeah, human rights, but they're not human. But can they be considered a non-human person? I don't know.
It was almost like the AI question, but in like fantasy form. And there was also the idea of, I've completely forgotten the idea. I was going to say something, and I've completely forgotten. So go ahead. I'll try to remember.
Have any of you seen Rick and Morty?
Yes.
Okay. The Undead remind me of a more serious version of Mr. Meeseeks, where it's this being that's created to do something, but being in existence is agony for them. So all they want is to no longer be in existence. And that's how I feel the Undead are. So like they come into this corporeal form when they're bound, and all they want to do is be unbound and be a free idea in the world. I'm sorry.
That is the perfect description of him, and now I cannot stop thinking of Seedless as Mr. Meeseeks.
I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me. I'm sorry.
That book just went to a 10. It's got that extra star. It's now a 10.
Sorry, but that's what I was thinking of, and when you guys get to the second book, you'll see more of that. I guess that's all I'll say.
That's what I was going to say. Wow. I've remembered is that I like the fact that that Seedless does the terrible thing, and you're like, that's messed up. Then he gets put in the cage, and you have that, oh, that's also messed up. But the guy doesn't. Give him this is literally caging a dude, and then immediately once he kind of gets a bit of freedom, he's straight back to like whispering in people's ears, and you're like, oh no, he's never going to change. Like, and it's one of those things where it really throws you around. You get whiplash between being like, Seedless needs to stop. Now let's see this. Okay, put him back in the cage, and it's the second half of the book. You just get tonal whip. You just get him whipped around every character's perspective and point of view. And it's why I don't have a favorite. I don't have a favorite character because everyone's kind of influencing each other. And I understand everyone to a point where I don't think I can pick a favorite.
Ota's a cinnamon roll, and I don't I love him so much. He's my favorite. I flip between him and Mati. They're two sides of the same
Mati all the way.
They're two sides of the same coin. So.
Yeah, I actually, so when I first, like within the first chapter or two, I for a second thought that Ota was Métis before I got the name straight. I was like, oh, so he didn't actually leave. He went back and became a poet. And then I was like, wait, no. He started talking about how he started talking about his experiences with the dirt and everything. I was like, oh, wait, this isn't the same dude. I honestly like Ota better because just the concept, just his weird independence complex of just because you have more riches and more whatever and more glorious purpose actually just means that you're less free to do what you want and to live a good life, to live a life you want.
I feel like Mati wants
I'm going to give that glorious purpose.
Mati wants to do what's right as a poet. He wants to succeed at being a poet. And I feel like on the other hand, you have Ota who just wants to do as much of the right thing as he can do. And so they have these differing, they're trying to be good, but in different ways for different reasons.
Yeah, I actually really like the dynamic of, in terms of the idea of scholar versus like menial worker, and the idea that one is not better than the other, one is not a more beneficial path. Like in terms, I definitely related to that dynamic because, I left university at one point and was like, no, I'm going to just earn money, work an office job, that type of thing, and I worked in pubs, that type of thing. Choose a more menial path, And then that also, through that aspect, allowed me to explore more arts and everything, which then leads you back to education. And I really enjoyed like Etani's path, Otar's path of leaving education to do a menial job, to then be like, oh no, I kind of wanted to do the more scholarly aspect, just not the way they were doing it. And the idea of one not being better than the other was really enjoyable, and it's something that I've wanted to do, but I would never be able to do as well as this book does so subtly.
He brings up really prescient like social commentary things in these books, but not in a way where you feel like it's thrown in your face.
Yeah.
Like you have the subtle, so you have this idea of like, is school worth it? Which one's better? And then he touches on abortion with what happens with Seedless, but it's not thrown in your face. And it touches on all of these other things. And it's refreshing to be able to think about those things and not feel like someone's shoving their opinion down your throat in a book. Because I feel like that happens fairly often now, especially in like more contemporary things and even in newer fantasy literature. So
that is true. He makes a lot. He like asks a lot of questions without asking any questions at all. Like he'll simply have a sentence and I'm like, oh great, I have 14 things to think about now. I'm gonna have to close the book and go through the 14 different questions I now have about myself and about the society I live with. And it's just a random sentence, but I ate bread, and I'm like, but what, white or brown? And it's like just random things where I'll now question myself.
Yep.
My entire character as a human being. And I have extreme main character syndrome. So throughout this book, I'm like, do I need to completely change who I am now? Do I need to be more like Ota? And going between understanding everyone, I was like, great, I've got to become 14 different people.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you should murder some random poet in the street then. Yeah.
Would any of you guys want to be a poet?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
100%. I'd love to, of course. Power.
Okay. Power. Great purpose. What's glorious purpose.
Glorious purpose, yeah. Of course.
I don't know if I'd want to be a poet. That's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of power. And power corrupts.
Yeah, imagine seeing Hesse's character and being like, yeah, I'd love a bit of that.
I feel like if it were
Ellen
today,
would definitely be guys.
You'd have to pass a psych test to be a poet.
I mean, that's the entire reason of the school is the way it is.
I feel like it causes more trauma than it does make sure you don't have trauma.
I mean, is the point? I feel like to be a poet, you have to be traumatized in some way.
It's like being a radiant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like having a ring of power. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every hero is flawed.
I think I would like to be a poet because of the understanding that like is required to bind an Undead. I would love the scholarly aspects of these things and learning to understand just one idea. I think afterwards it'd be terrible. After like I'm just, oh hi, I'm a poet. I have an Undead.
I'm gonna sit here and wait until the king tells me to do something cool.
I would turn into like a rogue revolutionary poet, probably.
Alan would.
Yeah. I
That's
just get fed up with the system.
That's another thing I was going to bring up is the fact that Hesse doesn't interact with really any character. Like, even when he's given the job, he doesn't interact with them. Other people do, but he actually doesn't talk to anyone. And it's like, being a poet sucks. Like, he literally just spends all day pitying himself. He doesn't even, like, the fact that he, like, has that little place, and everyone just assumes he goes and hires prostitutes and stuff. But in my head, I'm like, no, that guy just goes and sleeps. Like, he just drinks and sleeps himself off. Yeah, it's his depression cave.
Yep.
And like because no one else speaks to him, no one has any idea who he actually is. And I really like the fact that the only time people talk directly to him is after the mistakes happened. And they're like, bro, snap out of it. You're a poet, catch up. Like, your entire life has been pain. And it's this expectation of just like deal with it that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Why do you want to be a poet, Klaus?
Power! Well, it could be useful, you know? Like,
Why?
you've got something to do, you have status, you can help people because they are pretty useful. Yeah.
Even if
you can trust me, Kate, I can be a poet. I would never abuse my power, you know me.
Your power well, when you're a poet, you have a lot of influence on apparently the economics of the city that you belong to. I found that to be completely interesting, like economics and the prospect of what happens if they go to war. Like no one dares go to war with them because they could be destroyed in a snap. It's like Thanos.
Yeah, it was a Cold War, which I thought was really cool because I've been doing some studying on the Cold War for reasons. So seeing that in a fantasy setting and realizing what that was, I was kind of excited.
It's like they've been in a Cold War for, 100 years, however long the Undead have been around, and Galt's been trying to take over everywhere else, and they're afraid to come.
And it freaked the hell out of me because I'm writing a series right now myself, and it's a bit like what I'm doing or what I'm trying to do. And I was reading that book and I was like, yeah, great. No. So somebody has already done that. That's lovely. And
there's nothing worse.
Whatever. Yeah.
I feel that.
You're gonna make it your own, man.
It's not the same thing. Like I don't have Undead, but I have people who have that one power. So basically superheroes. But it goes because they are so powerful that it's sort of like a Cold War. So I was like, okay.
Breaking up a bit, Klaus.
Anyway.
There's nothing worse than coming up with an idea and then finding out it's partially already been done. It's like, are you telling me I haven't come up with a completely original idea? And it's like, out of the how many millions years this and billions of years this Earth has existed, I haven't come up with a completely independent and original idea. I don't believe it. And it's like there's something about that crushes you. Even it's like there's nothing original anymore.
Everything's a variation on a theme.
That's kind of funny because I'm gonna plug Andrew at Get Right On In. He just had one of his authors versus writers talks that was actually on originality inspiration. So I can edit the description to include that.
I saw that, yeah.
I really enjoyed listening to that because originality is actually a pretty new obsession for society. And that talk kind of echoed some of the stuff that I've been processing throughout the years. I mean, I've tried writing books before. I mean, I tried writing a book when I was 12, and it was basically a reskin of Percy Jackson. So
I read Percy Jackson yesterday.
Yeah. So basically, I took that plot and basically
started
creating my own mythology, but using that plot.
Hey, it's like fan fiction, only in reverse.
Yeah. So I've come to grips with I'm not going to have an original idea. I'm not going to have a wholly original idea, but I can admire the versions. Like I want to write a fantasy book that is Cold War centered. That's takes place around a Cold War. So this was fun to see. It's not exactly what I'm thinking, but this has elements of an idea that I've had for a good bit. And some of the magic that I'm doing is not original by any means. There's definitely, it involved gems, and people have been doing that for ages. Like I could probably name you 3 or 4 different fantasy series that have magic centered around or with gems involving.
The Arkenstone.
Yeah, basically. So originality is kind of overrated, but that makes things like this book so much more beautiful when you get to it, because you're like, wow, this actually feels really original and unique and different.
I want to know how long he sat there with this idea and how he pieced it all together the way he did, because there are about a million ways it could have gone wrong, and he puts everything together so perfectly.
He does.
There's the idea of there's key players. This book doesn't mess around with minor characters, really. Like, every character that's explored is there for a reason and a purpose. It's not like Game of Thrones where you've got, or anything really, where there's unnecessary characters. Every character in this book has an exact purpose and will be exploited for that exact reason. No one's in there just for the hell of it. It's not like, oh, I fancy putting this character in. It's like, no, there's a plot function I need to happen. There's a character for it. And like, if you went through in terms of how many characters there actually are, there's probably like 15, maybe 18 that are actually like proper characters that aren't just like named like once. And I think that's one big difference. Like, this is a multi-POV character, but there are so few characters compared to a traditional fantasy book that it really helps. I think it helps him be able to tie everything up properly. Is like, I'm not messing around. I don't need to tie up a D plot. I've just got 3 A plots, and I'm just going to deal with those. And that kind of leads into the escalation, rather than like, we've got 3 little small plots that are going to create a big plot. This is like, we've got one, what seems like a minor plot, that is actually affecting these 2 bigger things, and it's all the same characters, but it's the idea of this small action has a bigger impact, which has a bigger impact, which has a bigger impact. And like, I think that's what makes it feel original, is the fact that it's not a bunch of different characters affecting an overarching plot. It's smaller characters creating kind of introducing you to an overarching plot that they don't even realize they're a part of.
It's a pretty good description.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's more about perspectives than about plot lines. Yeah.
Yep.
I appreciate that too, because it's different than a lot of other things that I've read. I don't know. I felt a lot lately that everything I'm reading is a recreation of something else, and this was just so like bright and new, and it sucked me in. And I would have finished all of them if not for the readathon. I think I burned myself out a little bit trying to force myself to read too much, and now I'm like, oh. But this conversation's making me want to finish Autumn War today, so I might do that.
Do it. Can't wait to hear your thoughts about the ending. The ending is, oh my god.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait to do all 3.
Yeah, I feel like I'm now going to, like, when I see Kate up a video, I'm going to feel jealous. And I feel like I now need to catch up just so I can actually watch the videos and not be like, oh, I'll watch this in a month then. And kind of get annoyed at myself.
Well, the Betrayal in Winter one doesn't have any spoilers in it, so...
Yeah, I did appreciate that for myself.
Yeah, it's so good. I can't wait to finish, so... I'm glad we got to talk about this. It's been fun, because
yeah,
to have these kind of conversations in Discord, too. Because you have to, like, block everything out.
Yeah, I will, like, mute channels, and then I will read 97 different messages and, like, want to respond to all of them, but I can't because they were, conversations from 6 days ago.
Yeah, that's me with the Senlin stuff on Voxer.
That's me every morning, because I'm in a different time zone than the Americans, and everybody keeps tagging me somewhere, and then I'm like, before work, first thing I'm doing when I'm waking up is like Discord. Oh, great, thanks, bye. Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say about this book that's different than the other ones is there's not really a bad guy in this story. In the first one, there's a lot of people that make poor decisions and like are doing things that aren't really good. But when you move to the next one, and especially in the third one, there's like a villain, but they're not evil. It's weird.
Yeah.
There's no
I like Klaus's face.
There's no good and evil in this story. Because even Seedless isn't really evil. He's just kind of chaotic neutral, I guess, if we're gonna put him in a classification. But yeah, there's just a lot of people having their own self-interests at heart.
Wait till you read Price of Spring. Because that is...
Everything will be answered.
Yeah.
I love the big baddie in Autumn War. They're so good. They're so good.
Yeah.
You guys gotta catch up. Now.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Ben, if you weren't forever away, how long does it take to ship something to the UK? I'll send
I have no idea. But don't worry, I'm gonna order him. I think the problem is I bought Jerusalem by Alan Moore, which is like 1,300 pages long, and then I was like, I have a lot to finish before I get through 1,300. I'm not like Klaus; I can't read it in a day and just be like, it's done. Like, that's going to take me a month. And it's Alan Moore, so it's going to be needlessly convoluted and everything. So I'm kind of thinking about putting that on the back burner now and finishing this beforehand. Yeah, I think so. Because this is so easy to fly through.
Absolutely.
Also, it's a delicious, feel. I don't know. I am a sucker for books. Like, the feel of a book means everything to me. This is a fantastic feeling book. It's the reason I didn't want the bind up. Yeah, because I feel like it's so cumbersome, and that's why the idea that the last one's hardback is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard.
I didn't know that when I ordered them, and I died inside a little bit.
Understandably, I'd have been raging. I'd have messaged Abraham directly and been like, "Bro, you need to hook me up. I don't know whether just send me just send me a manuscript. I'll print it myself. I don't care."
I'll tell you one more, Ben. I told you I ordered all of the hardcovers. Then after that, I got them all in.
I saw that.
My copy of Autumn War is like 1.5 inches shorter than all the other ones.
No,
they're doing my man.
That's the worst. To my Senlin ones, it's behind me. You can. Oh, I'm stupid. It's there.
Yeah.
The middle one is this higher. Arm of the Sphinx is this higher than the others because it is the UK paperback version or whatever, and it just doesn't make any sense at all. But anyway.
But Ben, these books are they're like the perfect size, and they smell good.
And
they're like
didn't
this
even
one
break. You know what I mean? Like I was fully holding it. The spine is not broken at all. So big up to the printing company. That's my pro for this book. Is printing company did a great job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Publishers should have kept them around for the fourth one.
They definitely should have done that. And yeah,
I can't believe that it was never I can't believe there weren't enough people who read this book to warrant printing a mass market paperback. Like, it blows my mind.
It's that 3.6. They did it dirty.
Yeah.
I couldn't even find it in bookstores. I have never seen it in any bookstore. I had to go search for it online, and the only reason I'd heard about it before Alan read it was from Reddit. Because it's on a bunch of people's best series lists on r/fantasy.
It's probably. I feel like it's because it's 2006. Like this is like Atlantis for me. Like for Brandon Sanderson, this is the start of a whole different breed of fantasy. And this doesn't fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like people that were reading fantasy in 2006, fantasy has adapted to this, whereas it feels cliched, but it's like this was ahead of its time when it came out. This is not like it's not like other books. Like it is literally the definition of that.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was ahead of the publishing curve. If this came out now, it would pop off.
Yeah. BookTube darling for a year straight, at least.
Yeah.
Spread the propaganda machine.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was like when everyone was bigging it up. It's the same as Send and Ascend. When people started putting reviews out, I'm like, you're getting paid for this and I don't know about it? Because everyone's putting out positive reviews. And that's how I felt about A Shadow in Summer. I was like, can Daniel Abraham pay me for this? Because everyone, for a 3.6 book, this is getting a lot of 5 stars. And I felt like I was missing out. But no, it's just incredibly good.
So you guys weren't paid?
No.
I need to start putting an email. I need to start putting an email in my description. Jesus.
Yeah, I got to put that contact info, Ben.
He's too busy writing The Expanse and being famous for that to chill on his own work.
Oh, they're done with that now. He's not writing for that anymore. That thing's out of his hands.
I'm like secretly hoping that he would be as talkative as Bancroft is on Twitter, and I keep tagging him in all of my Long Price Quartet stuff, but no luck yet. No luck.
Well, to be fair, I kind of feel like it would probably... It's kind of like finding out you're a famous cult, like your movie's a famous cult movie. It's like, I'm glad you enjoy it, but where were you when it came out? Like, I could have really used your support back then. Like, I imagine people being like, I remember that thing that tanked. I really like it. Like, it must be really heartbreaking to be like, oh, great.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to read this.
Years later.
I was a 15-year-old then. I don't think I would have gotten it the way you're supposed to get it.
That's what I mean. Just tweet him and be like, bro, you should have really released. Just completely rub it in his face. You ever
re-release it now.
Yeah.
In all mass market paper.
They actually should. If they re-released this back into stores, like, and just pretended it was new, I reckon it would bang. If you were like from the author, like from one of the authors of The Expanse, brand new fantasy quartet, people would be all over it.
Yeah.
And just don't pretend. Burn all the old copies.
No.
Yeah, that's a thing that they could do. Definitely.
What do you guys think about this being made into like an HBO series or something? Because I feel like it couldn't be in a movie. I think it could work if they put a lot of detail into it.
It's too good to be made into another medium.
You think so?
I think it fits perfectly for a TV show, personally. I wouldn't want to see it. I would hate it. I would not want to see it. I completely if they made a TV show that then made it popular, I'd be fine with that. But I don't think I'd be able to read it and then be like, oh. Also, the only problem is the idea of Otar and Itani would not then be a reveal, because it would be like, oh, that's the same actor. But in terms of
no, because Ota was really young. He was like 10 years old or something like that.
Oh, that's true. To be fair, that is true.
You'd have a kid.
But I feel like it's the same as like kind of related. But in terms of with casting, this book is so clearly influenced by like Asian culture that you would not be able to whitewash this. It's the same as Stormlight Archive. Like the idea of the whitewashing the Stormlight Archive would just be an atrocity. It would completely undermine everything. And I feel like that's one of those things that pushes these kind of stories from being made, is the idea of like producers being like, well, we no attractive stars type thing. That would be the only problem with this. But if that's the other problem as well, is because it's Daniel Abraham, because it's a white guy writing it, it's not like if this was made in a Far Eastern country as like a subtitled or dubbed TV show, I would love it more than anything. Because it would be made in the West, I'd kind of feel iffy in terms of watching a live action version.
I think so. After another friend, so Michael Nip, I keep plugging things that I've watched, did an adaptation talk. He was just rambling about adaptions, and something he said was only mediocre books should be made into movies and TV shows. And I think I agree with that. And I think, I'm sorry, Klaus, but the Shadow and Bone series is an excellent example of this. Shadow and Bone is at best.
Shadow and Bone.
Why?
I
never said Shadow and Bone was anything but mediocre. Six of Crows is above average in my opinion. Shadow and Bone.
Good. I thought you were like crazy over Six of Crows. I thought it was mediocre as well.
I'm crazy about Six of Crows. Shadow and Bone is mediocre.
I thought Six of Crows is mediocre, and I'm sorry.
Glorious Purpose is coming after you.
It's an example of, hey, we made this better than we improved on some of the gripes with the book. And I think it's being pretty successful so far.
Okay, Pete. Lord of the Rings.
It's great.
Explain that one.
What do you mean explain that one?
You said only mediocre things should be turned into television shows or movies. Klaus is going to come after you.
Yeah, that's a fair.
I do not think Lord of the Rings is mediocre. I think
Song of Ice and Fire was made into a TV show.
In the TV show.
Yeah, but
I don't think it. I'm not a bit. I think it was sensational. It wasn't like amazing. So
Song of Ice and Fire, like the series or the book version?
The book version was sensational, as well as the TV show, but it was more sensational than it was great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings was different enough that, yeah, there were liberties that were taken, and I'm salty about things that they left out. Tom Bombadil. Yeah. It's. I still think it's a great movie because Peter Jackson did some amazing things with it. But especially with the track record of recent adaptations, talking Percy Jackson, Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Aragorn, The Hobbit,
freaking Artemis Fowl. I want to burn everything involving with that movie.
The Watch.
I'm reading Guards right now, and then I'm gonna watch the Watch just to experience hatred. Just to facilitate my own pain.
Can you do like a reaction vlog for the Watch?
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
That is
like a first reaction to reading and watching at the exact same time.
Yes. You
That's
should
a good
do
idea.
that.
That would be great.
Please.
All right, that's okay. It comes out on the 1st here.
Oh, it's not out yet?
No, we're British. We're behind the times. Keep up. I'm living in 1998 still.
Yeah, you still got the Victorian chimneys and everything. Like,
yeah, this has just come out here. Like,
when's the oh crap? What's the name? The thing that happened in like 1901, the big crystal, where Queen Victoria was like, Britain is so great, come see. Giant glass house. People from all over the world came, and there were exhibits and all this other jazz.
World Exposition.
Yes,
British.
World Exposition.
I tried to ignore my own history. Thank you very much. There's nothing positive to find there. It's just poverty and oppression.
Oh, sad. That's sad.
I mean,
good fish and chips.
Yeah, they're not even English. We just appropriated it, stole it from Belgium. We were like, it's ours now.
Oh my gosh.
We like to pretend, even though tikka masala was made for British people because we had terrible palates and couldn't handle Indian food. We're like, that's ours. Tea, that's ours. Which is like, that's my comments on British culture. I apologise to any people that like Britain. As the only British person here, I probably hate Britain the most.
Hey, I'm not so fond of America either, so you're not alone.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't hate where you were brought up,
Klaus is like, I love it.
Klaus is like, Germany's awesome, so, well.
I mean, I can't think of anything in Germany's history that would...
Yeah, well, there are some tiny issues, but...
Almost spotless record.
Almost spotless record. I mean, it's just, yeah. But it was 80 years ago, so, well, whatever.
Nobody
This took
remembers
a turn,
that.
Ben. This took a turn.
Sorry, Pete. Just gonna forever be on your channel.
This is great.
Oh, people are going to start this video and be like, oh, I know what this is about. And at the end, they're going to be like, what just happened?
Yeah, timestamp this. this.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Timestamp this.
Heritage.
Speaking of time, I have got guests in literally 5 minutes. So
yes. So
We've
we're gonna
talked
wrap this up.
yeah,
We did.
might be. You can go on without me, of course, but yeah.
No, I think an hour and a half is a nice cap for everything.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Ben, Kate, and Klaus, for coming to discuss this. Just thanks. I like discussing these things, and I appreciate everybody's time and everybody's thoughts on all of this. For those of you that are watching afterwards, leave us comments if we missed things, if you liked things that we didn't like. I think we liked most of the things. If you hated something about this book, tell us, please.
Yes.
Are you one of those people that rated it 3.5 stars or 1 star? Tell us why.
1 star. Heavens.
Yeah,
Daniel Abraham, if you want to pay me to review the next, just leave a comment.
And yes, honestly, if Daniel Abraham, you want an interview, he's an author I would love to interview. Anyways,
Yes.
have a great night. Have a great day. Sleep well. Enjoy your guests, Klaus.
Mm-hmm.
Don't scare them off.
Gonna try real hard. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'll take a pose of thanks, which is...
Yes.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Sorry, I've had a chaotic end to this. I'm so sorry.
Bye.
Good.
We will see you all in winter. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, I hit the wrong button.
Yeah.